Hello YouTubers and Cubing World enthusiasts. Today I'll be making the first video for my Cubing World series, and this video will be on fluidity. Now this is going to be a multi-part video, but it's actually going to be of a slightly different format than what you're used to for my multi-part videos. Normally I just make one video and then make the next part and the next part and the next part, and they all connect together to create one giant concept and video. This one's going to be done a little bit differently. Today I'm going to go over the entire concepts of fluidity that I have for you, and then I'm going to make smaller videos going over each of the concepts and ways you could practice them, but also basically explicating what I'm talking about with each of these little concepts. So let's start off with fluidity, the concept of fluidity. Now, when I say the word fluidity, I'm referring to the thing that makes solves look good, that makes solve look non-stop, continuous, almost prepared looking even, because it seems as if the solver has no need to stop or has no need to think. It looks as if he's just simply reacting on a constant basis without stopping. As many of you guys may have known, if you were on speed solving, I put up a 9.32 average of 5 video. People tried to rip me apart, saying that I was lying, making it up. My solves looked too good. What they were saying is that my solve looked too fluid. They looked as if I wasn't, almost as if I were looking ahead non-stop, which I was. And which today I'm going to explain for how you guys can do. You see this all the time in some of the fastest cubers, people like Felix, even Ro, who's someone who's a very choppy solver, who just really fast TPS. He still looks ahead and he solves very fluidly. And the things that make their solves fluid is what I'm going to go over today. And so I hope you guys can understand that concept. But basically it's going to be helping you to limit the amount of times you stop during the solve, increase your look ahead, and make it so that you're constantly doing something. So that's the first thing that the first concept we're going to go over. Make sure you are constantly doing something on the cube. Never just be staring at the cube. That's a waste of your time. If you're ever just sitting here and you don't know what you're going to do, or you're paused and you have nothing planned out, then you're probably not solving very effectively. Like, that was not a very effective solve class. If I ever find myself here and I go, what do I do? Well, that's a pretty big mistake on my part, because one, I should notice the pairs that are lying around here. But more importantly, I should have looked ahead the entire time I was making my cross, so that I could make sure that I didn't have to pause. So that's the next tip, is you should always be doing something, and you should always be looking ahead. Now, this is something you guys have heard multiple times, but it's very key to any good solve. You constantly want to look as far into the cube as possible. So if you see here, I have multiple pairs I could choose from. I could go with the simple front one right here. I could also go with this right here, which would form a nice pair. And I could also go with this one right here. Now, I probably would have gone with that one. But yeah, when I'm doing this, when I'm going through my solves, I'm trying to make sure that I always constantly look ahead. So let's say I chose this pair right here. The second I chose that pair, I'm watching the other pairs and how they formed to determine what I'm going to do. And I always let my look ahead determine my TPS. Now that's the other trick. Look ahead should be your limiting factor. In other words, you could probably go, if you wanted, I'm sure you can do this, you can test this by your AUX. You could probably go 10 plus TPS easily. But that doesn't mean that you can process 10 plus TPS as easily. And you should only be moving as fast as your mind can process. If you move faster, then you're going to pause a lot more, and pauses tend to cause longer solves, especially something like a sub 10 solve. Even a 1 second pause screws over your entire solve. It messes up your entire average. So little things like that make huge differences. So let's go ahead and go over another concept. Now, another concept in fluidity, alright, let's go, is never stopping. So now this is going to be a little bit contrary, because I'm going to both tell you to never stop, but then in practice to always stop. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. When you're solving, your goal should be to never need to stop, because you know what is coming every second of the way, and you have no need to stop. When you are practicing, however, you should always stop at every single chance you get and make sure you consider all possibilities. This will help you to learn proper pair choice and multiple other concepts. So let's see here. Do that. Yes. Perfect. And then there. Okay. So while I was making this cross, I made it my goal to pause the moment I finished any particular pair and consider all the other possibilities. So when I was solving, I would try and not stop at all. I would try and constantly look ahead and move. But when I'm practicing, I want to look at all possible choices that I have from a particular point of view. So here, let's see, I have 3 pairs left. I did an X cross there if you saw. And I have this pair, and this pair that I could do. Now, I know, because of what I showed you in that video, that this edge belongs with that corner, which means that is going, and since it lines up in the front or the back, it's misoriented, which means this pair is going to require a cube rotation, regardless of what I want to do, a cube rotation or something else. The other pairs, however, will not. So I would immediately not want to do the cube rotation when I choose one of the other ones. And I might notice that this pair is nice and easy to set up. And if I were really smart, I would know that this pair was only 2 gen, which means it would not affect the gen of this corner here. And so I could have just gone straight into that one. But I always considered both possibilities and make sure that you're choosing the correct one, the one that seems to be the most beneficial, before you start solving, before you move. So that's the other concept I guess we'll get to. Never move unless you have a reason to move. Now when I say move, I don't mean well, actually, I guess I do mean pretty much any form of movements. So if I am about to solve a cube, there, if I have this cube here, I only am going to move, finish my cross, if I know where my next pair is. If I don't know where my next pair is, I will not move. I'm not going to do little triggers like so many people like to do. I'm not going to do little cube rotations as a lot of people like to do when they don't do anything. Nothing. I only move when I know where I'm going. I let my look ahead determine my turns per second. If my look ahead is 0, if I can't look ahead, then I should not be moving. Because if I move, I might make unnecessary moves or uninformed moves. So in practice, always do this. Always make sure that you only move if you know what's going to happen. So for instance, here, I have multiple pairs I could choose between. This pair, this pair, this pair, and that pair. Okay? And I want to choose the one that's going to be the smartest. Now, there's a lot that goes into these. I probably would have chosen that one because that one was the easiest, but that's actually after a little bit of time. Now, each time I do these things, I always want to make sure that I'm looking at all possibilities before I proceed. So let's say I could just do this one, right? This looks easy. But if I were actually smart, I would see that this one is a lot easier. And it happened to set up that one nicely. There. There's that pair. There. So yeah, I would always make sure I check every possibility. Now, go over the last few tips because I don't want to spend too much time here explaining. I just want you guys to get the concepts down. If the other things are, when you're practicing, make sure you always plan out an X cross. So this time I didn't, but I did plan on a cross plus 1 here. So I knew where the first pair was there. You always want to make sure that when you're practicing, you're not wasting, or you're learning something new, and that you always, oops, that was a mistake, and that you always try and make practicing as difficult as possible. So every single time I solve, I try and solve with an X cross, even if it's not easy, just because simply taking the effort to do so will make me better at X crosses and will help my look ahead substantially. The other thing that you'll see I do is I don't regrip unless I need to. Regrips waste time, and they're a form of movement. So if we don't need to move, we shouldn't move. And if we don't know what we need to do, we should definitely not be wasting time regripping. That's a huge waste of time. Imagine the amount of time it takes to do this, back and forth. And most regrips are down and an up. So no regrips if you can. And yeah, so I think those are the main things that I'm going to go over. And I will make sure to make a little video on each of these concepts. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. Make sure you're always letting your look ahead determine your speed. You're always doing something on the cube. Never move unless you are doing something. Don't pause, but don't pause unless you absolutely have to. So move as slow as you need to make sure you're not pausing. In practice, however, pause after every single pair and make sure you take the time to consider all possibilities. These will all make you a much more fluid solver. Remember to constantly be looking ahead. Don't regrip. Plan out X crosses as often as you can. And make sure you observe every single possibility in every single pair before you move on. So those are the main concepts. I'll make a video on each of them separately. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please rate, comment, subscribe.